are back for another wonderful episode, and I have Karen Covy in the house. Hello, Karen.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm so happy to have time to talk about life after divorce, how to prepare for potentially another marriage, how emotions can be flying when you're in a relationship. So, whether you're in a marriage right now and questioning, should I stay or should I go? Or you are kind of in love and in a partnership right now and maybe navigating some new things and wondering, how do I set myself up for success when it comes to potentially doing it again? So Karen and I are going to be diving into this big topic. Let me let you know a little bit about Karen. Karen Covey is a divorce coach, lawyer, mediator, speaker, and author. She coaches busy professionals and business owners all over the world to make clear, confident decisions during highly charged emotional situations. Yeah, relationships. We never have emotions with relationships. What are you talking about? Anyway, Karen helps her clients either restructure their marriage or become the CEOs of their own divorce so they can navigate through their divorce with less conflict, less expense, and less damage to themselves and their children. So, wherever you are on this spectrum of I'm in a relationship, thinking of divorce, I'm curious about what might it look like if I do it again or anything in between. This is a hot topic, and I'm so thrilled to be having it with you. So welcome, 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 Karen. So cool.
Thank you so very much, and I am thrilled to be here.
Yes, it's a big topic, and my audience typically are on the other side of divorce. But I know that even if you're on the other side of divorce, there's still a lot of decisions to be made, especially with our hearts, especially with, do I get married again? Don't I get married again? How do I make sure I'm safe with my finances? I mean, there's so many things to look at. So I would love to just start with, what are some of the hot topics you notice when it comes to people in a relationship that are questioning, should I stay or should I go? What are some of the things that you notice that are like, we need to look at this and navigate this so you are a CEO of your choices?
That's a great question. And when we're talking about people, particularly in midlife, because that's the revolution in divorce right now. It used to be that once you got to a certain age, you just kind of sucked it up and stuck it out. But today, people in midlife more than ever are getting divorced. It's the most fastest growing demographic of people getting divorced are those who are 40s, 50s, and up, right?
Yeah.
So the question is why? And what happens is people at that stage, you've got some history behind you, and the biggest stumbling block is, do I really do this? I mean, if I've stuck it out this long, do I just keep sticking it out for another, 10, 20 years? Or do I look at this time as, this is all the time I've got left. I don't know how much that is, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, but whatever it is, I want to live.
Mm.
I really want to enjoy my life. So that's why I believe people in midlife are having more of a crisis. They're getting divorced more often. It's not that they're any less happy than they've ever been, but they're starting to question, is this all there is?
I love that. And to me, that's about waking up. And I remember going through this very specific journey in my mid 40s with a teenager, and really asking that question, is this how it's going to be? Like, is this something, like I had done my 20 years and I'm like asking myself, can this person go for the ride with me and do the work to make the next 20, 30, 40, whatever years, hopefully, uh, better than what we've had. And he wasn't willing to go for the ride. He wasn't able to step in the fire with me and do the work. And I was doing all the work, learning and growing. And I put the stake in the ground and said, yeah, my life matters. And I want different. I want better. And sadly, the marriage ended. And I needed to navigate some of my big emotions of how to start over and how to navigate, how do I do it with a solid foundation after he's been paying all the friggin' bills for the last 20 years. So there's a lot of decision making. And I want to just again remind whoever's listening and watching that maybe you're long past it, like me. However, now you're potentially in a relationship or wanting to call in a relationship, and perhaps you're actually scared of, I don't know if I want to get married again because I don't want to do what I did before. So let's talk about some of the big decision making that somebody needs to kind of look at and get clear about, so that if they are in a relationship, how to do it well so it's sustainable, and how to get out of dodge if they say, yeah, this is not working for me. That's kind of a huge topic, and I think we're just going to riff on that.
That makes a lot of sense. There's a lot to riff on, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the first thing that I would say is if you are in a relationship, you're past divorce or maybe you've never been married yet, and you're in a relationship and you're thinking of leveling up, you're thinking of going to get married. Okay, great. The question is, which sounds like a ridiculous question, but why? Why do you want to get married? What
That's, that's like thank you for asking that question. I don't know where you're going with this, but I think this is important for any decision that we're making, which is to ask yourself why, so that you could really get aligned with your decision. So keep going. I'm so thrilled you asked that. Why? Why do you want to get
yeah.
married?
I mean, are you and understand you have to ask why and listen to the answers that come up for you without judgment. It is perfectly okay if when you say, "Well, why do I want to get married?" It's because I believe in marriage or I want to take this relationship to the next level. I want a commitment. I want, we're stronger together than we are separately. Whatever the reason is, it's not about good, bad, right, wrong judgment. It's about understanding yourself and what your motivations are. And sometimes, and this is so horribly unromantic, I get it. I'm the first one to admit it. But sometimes, as you get later on in life, it makes more sense not to get married than to get married, where you might say, look, we want a committed relationship of another kind. We're going to make it up ourselves. We're going to make up our own rules. Why not? There are so many different kinds of marriage today. There are so many different ways that you can do this. There is nothing wrong with making up your own rules for your own relationship. And you can put them in writing if you want. I would highly recommend that. It's probably not enforceable in a court of law, but that's not the point. The point is you're getting clarity on what do you want, and your significant other, soon to be spouse or not, is getting clarity as well. And so you're defining what the relationship is. There is no relationship that does badly because you talked about it and set the rules in advance.
Oh my God, there's so much there. Well, sir, I'm going to just like underline what you just said, the last thing you said, which was having a conversation, having some communication. So getting clear of your why, getting clear of why you want it and really spend some time with it. And then to actually have some of these conversations to even get more clear, because you might have your perspective, they have theirs. I know when I was going through my divorce, he was a lawyer at one point. He wasn't anymore. And he just wanted to, he literally took something off the internet for a divorce, a separation agreement. And it actually worked out great. It actually did. So she was like, for those of you who are listening, she was like, oh no. So maybe not for everybody, but it worked for me. However, he was a lawyer. I don't know what he knew. So I did go to a lawyer for myself to ask a lot of questions. What are my rights? What do I need to know? I needed information. And frankly, the lawyer gave me some information that I did not use because I took that information and said, no, that's not for me. However, when I entered into that conversation and negotiation with that separation agreement, I was able to say, yeah, that's not what works for me. I would like to talk about this. And then you have a conversation because you're informed. So I'm right there with you. Conversations and information. Um, Anything you want to add to that?
No, I mean, and I think you said it beautifully. You want a conversation you need one to end a relationship. And that's scary to have because you've got all these emotions coming up, but you need those conversations And you need the conversations when you want to begin a new relationship or take the relationship you have and bring it to a new level. It all starts with a conversation. That's why I'm a big fan of prenups.
Yeah.
It's not about the prenup. It's about the prenup makes you have a conversation about money. And there are so many emotions swirling around about money. And we all have a tendency to think that our way is the way. It's the only way. It's the way everybody does things. And I can promise you there are a million ways to do anything. And
Yeah.
if you're thinking that, you're going to, for instance, you're going to get married to a new spouse and you're going to do a yours, mine, and ours, right? Each of you has your own money, and then you pool money for shared, responsibilities. Okay, great. But your new spouse is thinking, no, we're just going to pull it all together, and we're going to, those are conversations, and you do not want to be having those conversations after the fact because they get more emotional. They're harder to deal with, and if you're going to have a problem, if you're not going to see eye to eye and be able to work it through, you want to know that before you're married.
Quick interruption, and then we'll get right back to the show. There is something time sensitive. There is a contest going on, and there's one lucky prize winner to win the Relationship Toolkit program. This is a 5-week program with me guiding you to help you really stand your ground and have healthy boundaries, to be able to speak your truth and trust your gut, to have good, solid self-esteem, and to learn what the healthy relationship that you desire looks like. You learn to rewrite your love story and so much more. So there'll be one winner. There's some really juicy second place prizes as well. So you're going to want to click the link in the show notes for enter the contest, and be sure to put your correct email address and your phone number so I can reach out to you and let you know if you're the winner. Good luck.
Oh my God. Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, it's sort of like what I tell people on the first date. If you are sitting across somebody and if they ask you a question that you're not ready to answer just yet, and I always encourage people, don't lie, don't make shit up, because eventually, but be honest and say, I'm not really feeling I don't really feel like talking about that right now. Can we put a pin in that and discuss it another time and see how they react to that? Will they keep pushing you? Will they go, oh, sure, no worries. Like being able to see how people react to certain things is key. And then there's the other thing is, if you cannot talk about money or sex with someone, is this somebody that you want to be in partnership with? I always say, if you can't talk about sex, you probably shouldn't be having sex with them unless you just want to have a fling and have some fun. If you're looking for a really solid relationship, again, you said it earlier, there are no rules. We make up our own rules, and we need to actually unpack what are the rules or our beliefs that have us making our choices. And so when it comes to sex and money, and I'll throw in religion too, but definitely sex and money, if you can't talk about those things, how is that going to be in a long-term relationship, in a committed relationship? So I really love that you said you got to talk about it. And if you ask for a prenup, there's going to be a conversation.
Yeah, and it's not that it's not romantic or you're thinking that the marriage is going to fail before it even started. That's not the point. The point is it makes you have a conversation that's real, because you can have a conversation that's kind of, hypothetical out there. Well, we could
Yeah.
do this or we could, but when it's on paper and it's going to be a legally binding document, it has a different sense of gravity, and people start to pay attention and they start to take it seriously. And it's going to give you, like, I love that you said it's going to give you information. It's not just about being able to come to a meeting of the minds, which is ultimately hopefully where you get to. But even if you don't get to that point, you're going to discover things not only about your potential partner but about yourself that you might not have known before, right?
Yeah.
And this gets really sticky, especially in midlife, because you're not 20. You have something to lose at this point. You may have kids from another relationship. You may have assets or debts from, prior up to this point in your life. You've got things you care about. you have to have these conversations because you have more at stake.
And you just said something that I think is huge, which is this is a legally binding document if you're getting married. And so I hear so often, oh, but I don't want to ask them about the prenup. I don't want to offend them. I'm like, look, if you are with, and of course, with the work that I do, it's like, well, let's unpack that fear. What's the biggest fear? What, well, he might think this of me or that of me. And then where's that from? And just being, look, if you're going into a legally binding agreement, this is part of it. Now, it doesn't mean you have to do it. Again, you make your own rules. Like, everybody take a breath into that. Like, this is your life. If there's one thing I love more than anything with women over 40 and 50 and beyond, second half of lifers, is it's like, okay, I've played by the rules of so many other people. I've jumped through all the hoops. It's like, no, 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 no. This is my time. And I will share a quick story that when I was in my late 20s and engaged, and my husband, but at the time, my fiance, asked me for a prenup. I was like, what? Right? I was, well, I was young. However, I did get offended by that. I was just like, "Oh my God, like how could he ask me this? Doesn't he know me?" And frankly, that was the conversation we had. What he had assets. I was a starving actress. His dad was the one that was like, "You really need to protect yourself." And we had a conversation, and the conversation went like this. Now, everybody's going to have their own version of it. I said, truly, I mean, I'm actually kind of amazed that I had this in me because I used to have so much fear of conflict, stepping on people's toes. Will they leave me? Will they not like me? That was my past. And I really said to him, if you need a prenup, then you don't really know me. Now, that's very airy-fairy. That's definitely not very legally binding. However, that's what I said. And I said, if you need me to sign this, then you don't know who I am. You don't trust me. And that's not going to work for me. And so that was me. That was me. And ultimately, when we were negotiating the divorce, he said, I have to remind, because we didn't do it. He said, I have to remind you, you didn't sign the prenup. And you said that all of my money that was before the marriage, I would keep. And I, of course, said, I know, and I will honor that. Now, again, that's me. How many, and we're just going to throw out a question here. How many people have heard at least one story of the disaster of negotiating divorce, years and years, going through their savings because something wasn't in place, or relatives swooping in and trying to get money so we have to like weigh it all out and then decide what works for you. If I ever choose to go into marriage again, which I cannot see for myself in the legally binding document for me, I just don't see why for me. I I encourage people to do that now that I've seen the disasters that have happened.
Well, yeah. I mean, just the story that came to my mind was Steven Spielberg. In his first marriage, he and his wife, allegedly, depending on which one of them you asked, wrote a prenup on the back of a napkin in a restaurant. He wrote it down and she signed it or what have you, and he kept the napkin. And then they went to get a divorce. Now, of course, at that time, he was a struggling filmmaker. Nobody knew him. He'd never, he hadn't made it big yet. By the time they're getting divorced, of course, he had made it huge. And he brings out this napkin, and they had an entire court hearing over whether this napkin was a valid prenup or not. I think the court held no, it was not. But even still, the point is, you need, at least he had the conversation, didn't go well, and wasn't your story for sure. But what people in midlife need to know about this is that, especially if you have children from another relationship, prenups don't just cover what happens if you get divorced, they cover what happens if somebody dies. And guess what? Let's think of another scenario. Let's think of the scenario you and your prospective spouse, you buy a house together, you get married, there's no prenup, you buy a house together, he dies. And now his kids come to you and say, no, 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 we're kicking you out of the house because this is his house. And now, not only are you grieving the death of your husband, you're dealing with the conflict
Mm,
with his children, and you have nowhere to go and nothing to like. It's a nightmare from every direction. So,
yeah.
and it can go the other way too. It could be you died, and it's so the prenup starts to help you have these conversations about what happens if and what do we want. And it allows you to intentionally create a relationship and a legacy beyond your relationship that's what you wanted and not what happens by default.
I love that. And I want to underline intentionally create. So you need to get clear about who you are. You need to know what you want and why. And I mean, you don't need to, but if you don't, you're going to be swimming in some choppy waters because let's be real, people and things and relatives, we know we've seen the movies, but we've heard real stories. And so to set yourself up for success, whether it's leaving a relationship and making sure that you're being taken care of, or setting course with a new relationship with your eyes open, ask yourself some of these important questions. And I'm going to just also go back to what you said earlier, which is there's so many different types of relationships. Like I said, I can't imagine getting married. However, I've seen enough rom-coms and movies, like just like every other girl here. And I'm like, I love parties and I would love to have the marriage and the ceremony, but I don't necessarily want the legal document. I'm not having any other kids. And I, and who knows what's coming my way as I live into it. However, maybe, there's this thing called hand fasting, which is kind of what I would like to do. It's the old way of getting married without the legal system. So I empower each and every one of you ladies that are listening to really dig in and ask, and you may, and it might change because guess what? You're living it and you live into it and you change the rules as you go to what works for you and who you're with, to really ask yourself, what what is the kind of relationship you want? And are you in it? And if you're not in the relationship you want, is this one to stay in? Is this one to work on? How are you dealing with emotions around it? And what's your next step? What would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I was thinking of a story kind of on the other side, a twist on what you were saying. But the legal part of marriage is the license and the registration of the license that says you're officially married in the eyes of the state, right? If you had simply a religious marriage, it looks like you're married, but it doesn't really do anything. I mean, it might in your religion, but it doesn't legally. And I've had clients on the divorce end of things who came to me only to find out, much to their horror, that they were never legally married because their ex was still married to someone else, thought they were divorced, and the divorce wasn't done properly, or they weren't really divorced. And they're like, oh my God, I never got married. But then they acted like they did. And trust me, this is not a situation you want to be in. However, you can create whatever kind of situation you do want to be in. And it makes so much sense to do that. No matter what kind of relationship you have, it's going to be stronger if you talk about, okay, are we going to move in together? Okay, what does that look like? What are the rules of that? Who pays for what? How do you handle money? What about our respective kids if you have kids from other marriages? How do we handle that? What do we do on holidays? What do we do? Like, do we all come together? Do we do you do your thing, I do? Like, there's a lot more conversations to have when you're getting together and forming a relationship in midlife than when you were 20. There just are.
And I think it's so important to remember that, yeah, there it is a whole new landscape with grandkids. And people used to just, okay, sure, let's move here and let's do this adventure. Not to say that you can't, but there's just a lot of different moving parts at this stage of life. And I also hear often from my clients, it's like, oh, he's been too busy, or oh, he didn't reply to my text, or and sometimes, yeah, maybe they've moved on, or yeah, maybe it's not a fit. And maybe, his kid is home from college, or maybe his mother is in a nursing home. I mean, we have to realize that we are in a different stage of life. We need to be able to go for this ride and have these conversations. And I really also wanted to say, and you don't have to have all the conversations at once. Please, 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 on that first, second, third date, even those, the first few weeks of getting to know each other, don't have this list of, well, what should we do for Thanksgiving? And how do you feel about prenups? I mean, I really doubt most people are going to go there, but that's coming from fear of messing it up again, having the same crap hit the fan again. And that's why it's so important to enjoy your life and have a clear picture, as clear a picture as you can, with what you'd like to call in, because then it can unfold and you can relax into it. It's a big deal.
It is a very big deal. And, things that, like, I always tell people, you shouldn't, not that I'm the dating coach, but you shouldn't get married again unless you've lived at least a year with the person. You've been through all the holidays, you see what matters to them. Maybe it's important to them that they spend a holiday with their children and not with you. Well, if you need to be number one in their life and you want them there, you've got to think about that. You've got to talk about that. Give yourself time to let all the issues bubble up, and then approach them with curiosity,
Yeah.
rather than judgment, and say, well, I wonder what this is going to be like. Is this what I want? It gets back to the original question of, what do you want?
Yeah. And that's why I always say it's the cart before the horse when people leave a relationship and jump right into another one, or start dating again. I'm like, whoa, did you take the time to really ask yourself what's next for you? Did you come home to your heart? I mean, that's the biggest piece that I work on, which is that deep self-love in action, feeling worthy, enjoying your life, filling up your own cup, and then inviting somebody else in, because otherwise, again, you're just swimming in such a mishmash. So the more clear people are, the less emotional it will be, because you're going to be that much more grounded. And let's be real, love is risky business. Our hearts are involved. So the more we take that time to get to know each other, like you said, you're recommending a year. I mean, everybody's going to be different. That, everybody, again, rules. I just heard of an amazing story I'm going to do in a podcast where this couple met long distance, and they met, I don't know, God, within a month or so of talking a lot. Within 5 or 6 weeks, they moved in together, got married, I think 6 months later. I mean, I have to listen to it again. And they've been together 8 years. Talk about breaking all the friggin' rules. So that's an extreme in one direction. Waiting 6 years is an extreme, in my opinion, in the other direction. So, listen to Karen and myself when we say, get clear about who you are, come home to your heart, so you can make some good, wise decisions and have these important conversations so that you could feel in your nervous system, does this feel right? Is this what we really want or not? And then you can really create this next second chapter on your terms.
Such great advice. And you're right. I mean, rules are meant to be broken, but they're rules for a reason too. So it's examine them and see, does this feel right for me? But to jump into a second relationship or a second marriage, unless you've done the work on yourself, not your ex, because you weren't able to change your ex while he was your real spouse, you're not going to change him now, right? So the work has to come for yourself. Otherwise, what I see in clients is they just repeat the same pattern. Different person, same pattern, little different flavor. But so it's like the universe saying to you, you got to work on this. So
Yeah.
do the work, and then you don't have to repeat the pattern and the heartbreak. And then you can create the life and the relationship that you really want.
Absolutely. And that's my population. People come to me, they're like, I don't want to do what I did in the past. And I keep dating the same guy. They look different, and
Yep.
and they want something different. So we need to spend the time to do the healing work. So well done. How can people find you?
I am in all of the places on all the social medias, but the best place to find me is probably my website. It's karencovy.com, KarenCovy.com. There's no E in my version of Covey. Otherwise, I'd be related to somebody famous and I wouldn't have to work for a living.
Well, you could write him and go, you know what? I lost the E somewhere along the way. Maybe we can hang.
I
That's
would.
hysterical.
Unfortunately, the original Stephen Covey has passed, so I'd have to speak to the ether, but his son is alive, so
Ah,
he always,
there
hey,
you
hi,
go. The
bro.
family jewels are still around.
Yeah.
Anyway, Karen, this was so wonderful. We'll make sure that your website as well as your social media links are in the show notes. So many golden nuggets here about starting over and how to really co-create and have a great relationship. And it's all about you, sisters. Listen in, listen to your heart, get clear. You deserve the best. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Karen. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Junie.
My pleasure. All right, sisters, go do some journaling around what you desire, and I'll see you in the next episode. Mwah.